Everybody, okay, darlings, here we go. I've no idea what to talk about. Well, something will come. We'll look at it. So we think we just start with our little kind of aspiration. We're going to listen to these ideas, we're going to talk, converse, think about, analyze, and hopefully internalize as tools to help us one tiny step forward in this amazing development of this uh, we can mold our mind into any shape we like, as Lama says. That's a wonderful way of putting it, you know. What really you're trying to do with a spiritual practice is turn yourself into a marvelous person, develop your marvelous potential. And so here we're discussing, you know, our own potential, so then we can help others. That's the idea. So think like that. So I have no idea what to talk about. Come on. Maybe Lynn can ask a question, start the ball rolling.
Mm. Oh dear.
Come on.
I thought I muted myself, but oh gosh, I
No,
can.
but you turned your light down. We can't see you. That's better.
I know I've got the light behind me, but as it gets darker,
Yeah,
you're
okay, fine.
you're
So
gonna.
you got a question. So you start the ball rolling, Lynn. What came up? What's some of the things give us a question? Give us something to start talking about. Any old thing.
Mary Ellen, help me out because we were talking with Palmo
Yeah.
last night, and what did we come up with? Some of the stuff. Oh well, how about grasping onto blissful experiences in meditation? Do you want to take that on, or is that something
Of
you want?
course. Just that I think, I mean, I've never had I'm waiting, I'm still waiting for blissful experiences. I'm very happy for you. I'd rejoice if I were you and make the most of them. I'm waiting.
No.
45 years later, I'm still waiting, but I'm not in a hurry, luckily. So no, that's it. Well, I mean, that's it. If okay, would okay, okay. How interesting. That is a thing for many people, though. It's an interesting point. Okay, I mean, just um, you see, the key to that, I can't help but look into this. And we've just been recently in our Lamrim teachings in the Zurich Center, I think, we've been talking about this. And this is sort of looking into the middle scope, into sort of high school teachings, where we start to learn about the mind. This is something that's so important. And I think in answer to your question, Lynn, this is exactly the right answer. This is exactly the point. Because you see, one of the biggest problems we have is we don't the Buddhist model of the mind is really distinct, and that's what we learn in the Lam Rim. We learn in the middle scope. We get into the sort of the stages of the practice where we start to really seriously work on our minds. As we all know, the very first level of practice in Buddhism is you control your body and speech. You control the servants of your mind. Why? Which means you're disciplined. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't badmouth, don't this, don't that. Why? Is because, you know, our crazy minds, the deluded parts of our minds, like attachment and anger and fear and jealousy, they run the show. So our body and speech are just like are their servants. And if you look at the world, it's pretty evident. Have a look at the world, you know, look at what people do to each other. So clearly the mind is what drives it, but it's the body and the speech that do the harm, isn't it? So at least the first level of practice is control your body and speech. Do what your grandma says, behave nicely, you know. I mean, sort of, we think it's cute, but it's kind of profound. But then having harnessed our body and speech to some degree, hopefully, I mean, we're still trying, we've got space then. It's very logical. We've got space then to look into the mind itself. So, okay, put another way, the mind is the boss, okay? What goes on in the mind is the boss. We don't necessarily think that in our culture. We've got very different ways of understanding things. But the Buddha's view is so obvious. You know, everything that goes on in our mind, every millisecond of every thought, feeling, emotion, unconscious, subconscious, is what drives us. And so, and Buddha's amazing view is that we can try, like Lama Zopa says, we can mold that mind. I mean, finally, we can mold the mind, our mind, into the mind of a Buddha. I mean, astonishing. The potential we've got is just mind-boggling, you know. So the mind is the point. So even in the first level of practice where the Buddha exhorts us to not kill, steal, lie, do this, do that, basically not harm others, his reason, first of all, is so important. Just remind us, his reason is because what we think and do and say turns us into the person we become. So it's a method of harnessing yourself so you become a better person. But the point is, your mind is the person, is the mind. What decides not to kill? It's your mind. What decides not to use your hand to take something that isn't being given to you? Your mind. What decides to shut the mouth and not say those mean words? It's your mind. So you're working with your mind, but the major difference between this first level of practice And the second level, which I'm going to get into to answer Lynn's question, is your mind decides not to kill, but you're using your mind to control the body and speech. In the second level of practice, you're using your mind to control your mind. That's more sophisticated. So that's where it's crucial. So our biggest problem, and that question is just a perfect question, forget about bliss in your meditation, just any pleasure whatsoever, when you have a piece of cake, how to handle that pleasure. What do you do with that? How do you interpret it? Well, that means we have to understand the Buddha's analysis of what these different parts of our mind are, the role they all play. So the part that's quite a revelation for us, but it's hard to hear initially, is that, Buddha's in the three categories of our states of mind, which we learn about when we study Buddhist psychology in depth. As we've been repeatedly talking, we've got positive states of mind like love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, intelligence, generosity. We know these words intimately. We know these parts of ourselves intimately. Then we have the parts that are neurotic, deluded, disturbing, the source of our pain and the source of why we cause others pain with our body and speech. And they're the delusions, the attachment, anger and jealousy and fears and depression and anxiety, you name it. So Buddha's brilliant skill is in his analysis of these different states of mind. And this is something, even though we've heard it 1,000 times if we're Buddhist, it's still very hard to hear this. And this is unique to the Buddhist approach. Well, actually, it's coming from the Indians before him. They're the ones who first mapped the mind internally. We'll never forget that. These genius Indians before him. But this is a distinct model of the mind that is really unique to the Buddha's approach. And when we get this, we can begin to be a proper Buddhist. So, in fact, there are three categories of states of mind. There's no fourth. If we look into the mental consciousness, we know we've got from the second we wake up until the second we go to sleep, we have thousands and thousands of thoughts. 1,000 a second, practically. I think what I've heard in some Western psychology, and Buddha would absolutely agree. So it's the unpacking and unraveling and identifying and working with and harnessing and editing, if you like, of that chaos that is the job of being a Buddhist. So the crucial job is to distinguish between the neurotic ones and the positive ones. The theory is very simple. It's like saying, you've got a garden full of growing things. I'm not a gardener, so I would not know a herb from a weed. From most herbs and weeds, I wouldn't have a clue. I can recognize a rose. I can recognize, maybe a tulip. But anything more subtle, forget it, because I haven't learned botany. Well, that's a good analogy for our minds. There's chaos in there, seeming chaos. We call them feelings, but they're all driven by conceptual stories. So we have to distinguish between them. Why? Because the negative ones make us miserable and cause us to harm others and create future suffering and mold us into a very unhappy, miserable person now and in the future. And who wants that? Not me, thank you. The positive ones mold us into this marvelous person now and in the future. So this is the essential job of being a Buddhist. But now there's a third category, and this is what's always interesting. This third category, typically they call all of these they call them negative, positive, and neutral. They're simple English words, but we would never look at our mind in those terms. You don't look, neuroscientists don't say, where are the positive bits of the brain, where are the negative bits, and where are the neutral bits. It's just not how they talk. And we do not talk like this in modern psychology. No way. So it seems kind of weird. Negative, positive, neutral, what the hell are you talking about? But these are exactly the names of the categories. So clearly, if that's what Buddha is using, we had better identify what he means by that. Don't make up our own view. What he means by that is the negative ones. Another term for those is non-virtuous. Lama Yeshe I've identified in Lama Yeshe's book Mahamudra, 21 synonyms that he has come up with in his marvelous, desperate wish to communicate with us crazy people back in the 1980s when he first met, Western people, foreigners. In his incredible wish to try and communicate with us, to try to get us to understand these unhappy parts of our mind, using terms that we would not have considered. He has the craziest terms, dualistic puzzles. He's got 21 synonyms, and I probably missed some. He made them up. Some of them are traditional. Most he made up in his wish to convey to us the ridiculousness of these unhappy states of mind, and to try to get us to become familiar with his Buddhist view, which is utterly unique to the Buddha, that this stuff does not belong. It's adventitious. It can be removed from the mind. This is so radical. You go to a neuroscientist, can you please remove the bits of anger, the bits of jealousy? And they tried that in the 1930s. They called it a lobotomy. And what do? Turn us into veggies. So that's not how we think in our culture. So that's what we have to try and do, is lessen and eventually rid the mind of those stories, those neurotic, ridiculous parts of us. That itself is such a radical concept. Alone is so shocking. That's not our point here. So the next category, we like that. Positive ones. Yeah, love, compassion, intelligence. When we're on the receiving end of these, or if they were within us, we know they're the nice ones. But we don't really have methods to consciously identify between these, distinguish between them in our culture, and then grow the positive ones and lessen the rubbish ones. We don't have that view at all, for all sorts of reasons, which is not the discussion here. So now, what's the third category? So what's neutral? That sounds as if they're not important, doesn't it? Positive, negative, neutral. It sounds like they're not important. That's why I like to use the term the mechanics of our mind, and it's a pretty good term, I think. I don't know. What do you think, Palmer? Good enough? Mechanics, intention, attention, concentration, discrimination, good memory. They're like mechanics, don't you think?
Yeah, but what helps it to work and what makes it work. They're all factors that make it work. Kind of like
exactly.
the parts of an engine.
That's right, exactly. That's exactly right. And what's interesting in Buddhist psychology, and this is something we're not used to thinking about, and I'm getting to my point. I have not forgotten. This is driving Lynn's answer, okay? I'm coming to it. This third category, what they mean by neutral is neither negative in their character, nor virtuous or positive in their character. That means in order to understand this third lot, you've got to understand the first two. What does Buddha mean by a state of mind that's negative, neurotic? I mean, the words are pretty clear. Negative, neurotic, deluded, disturbing, distressing. That's good enough. And then those that are valid, reasonable, appropriate. And why? Because they're more in sync with reality. The negative ones are not in sync with reality at all. Now, the point about the third lot is this. So mechanics, meaning that, in other words, they're neither, in other words, okay, the simplest way to put it is, whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need good concentration. Whether you are a sniper, or a person trying to concentrate in your meditation, you need good discrimination. If you're going to kill somebody from long distance, you need very good discrimination. You need to know it, because discrimination is the part of the mind, one of these mechanics, that's working every single second, and it's the ability to distinguish between this and that, and it's working every millisecond. And if that goes, you are called insane. You have to be locked up because you've lost the plot. What do you think mindfulness, in its simplest form, mindfulness? Let me guess, you would always use the word memory. We put all these bells and whistles on it in our culture. We think of it as a virtue. You sit down, close your eyes and watch your breath. Oh, I'm being virtuous. No, you're not. Thieves need mindfulness. Mindfulness, simply speaking, is the ability to not forget what you're doing minute by minute, second by second. Thieves need it. Snipers need it. A hawk needs it. So in that sense, you need these to do bad and good things. So that's, in that sense, they're neither virtuous in their character nor non-virtuous, but they're crucial. And many of these are developed to an incredible degree of subtlety and brilliance in single-pointed concentration and meditation. You need these to practice Dharma. You need the thief as well, but we're practicing Dharma here. So now the part that's really surprising for us. There's many of these, but there's one that you keep listening to. If you hear about Buddha, you hear Buddha's teaching, you talk about the 5 aggregates, there's one in there called feeling. You listen to the 12 links of dependent arising, there's one in there called feeling. It keeps popping up, this funny word called feeling. So we use it synonymously with an emotion. Oh, such good feelings, Oh, such loving feelings, angry feelings. We use it synonymously with the word emotion. But that's not the meaning, but forget that. Now, what does Buddha mean by it? Because it's in this third category. It's very surprising. And there's only 3 kinds, according to this analysis. There are those that are called pleasant feelings. there are those that are called unpleasant feelings. And then indeed there are those that are called neutral, neither. But for those, let's forget those for now. Who cares about neutral feelings? It's a valid type of state of mind. But we're not interested in here. Look at pleasant and unpleasant. Now, these are synonyms for, so, okay, first of all, pleasant feeling. We understand the meaning. That is but the crucial point is this. Okay, sorry, wait. You can have the mildest good feeling, can't you, to the most intense bliss. And this is Lynn, obviously, in her meditation, having her rapture, her ecstasy, that Lama Yeshe talked about in Mahamudra. That when you've got concentration, they all talk about in the teachings, this genius technique these Indians invented before the Buddha, that he happily took with him when he diverged in his own direction. That, Lama tries to express to us, poor self-piteous, old, ridiculous people who think we're miserable. He tries to show us that we've got this incredible potential. This is Buddha's point, that we can experience, that our own mind, this is again getting to the point, but not quite the point yet, that our mind has this incredible potential to experience. Lama uses these words. God knows where he got these words from. He just got the most perfect words. It was incredible. He used the word ecstasy, rapture. He's not joking. He's not joking. I mean, who's had rapture and ecstasy? Not me. So there's a spectrum, isn't there, of pleasant feelings, from the most mild to the most intense. Now, this is where it really now throws us. Another word that's a synonym, literally, for pleasant feeling is the word happy feeling, or even the term happiness. Now, this is a problem. You go to all these conferences that the world does these days, happiness and its causes and what a happiness is. And there's 47 varieties. People come up with these different definitions. But what's fascinating, and this is what I'm now getting closer to the point I'm making, is that we conflate attachment, love, and happy feelings. The fact is, if I'm in love with somebody, who's my latest boyfriend, there's Brian, Brian's my boyfriend. If I'm in love with Brian, as we would say, I will definitely have bucket loads of attachment for him, which is in the negative heading. Don't be depressed by that. It's okay. My attachment exaggerates his deliciousness, exaggerates his role in my happy feelings, then manipulates him to make me happy. All this dramas that come from attachment. That is for sure. So attachment's under the negative heading, but then I also have love for Brian. I want Brian to be happy. I'm delighted when he is happy. That's a virtue. So those two completely. But the third one is naturally in that relationship, directed now mostly to the attachment. When you have contact with an attachment object, what is triggered is pleasant feelings. Now, that's all we want in our lives. That's what drives everything, any being, any ant, dog, human, monkey. We are driven, and this attachment is the boss in this. The job is to find that object, the cake, Brian, you name it, such that when you have contact with it, pleasant feelings are triggered. So now, because we conflate attachment and pleasant feelings, for sure, forget love for the moment. Then, as Lama Zopa said, when we hear the Buddha says, sorry, guys, you've got to give up attachment, we go, oh, I've got to give up my heart. I've got to give up my happiness, because we assume happiness. First of all, happy feeling is fine, but happiness, as soon as we say happiness, this is our big problem. We also conflate happiness with Brian or the cake. So when you tell me, you say, Robina, you look so happy. Tell me about what's going on. What will I do? I will give a detailed description of the object of my mind, called Brian, called the chocolate cake. And when you look back, people talk about their memories, What do you remember? Isn't the feeling. You remember the object. So because we are so addicted to believing that the Brian and the chocolate cake are the cause of my happy feelings, my happiness, we even think that is the happiness. Then the suffering feelings, we think that's the boyfriend. When Brian leaves me for a younger version, I will describe how evil Brian is when I'm telling you about my suffering. I won't describe my suffering feelings. I wouldn't even know how to. We don't know how to describe our mind. We describe the object. So if you're practicing Dharma and you're living in vows, purifying your mind every day, doing junior school, controlling your body and speech, putting atomic bombs under delusions, purifying your mind, living in discipline. And then you go to the next level and you start to work on your mind and start to give up attachment and give up anger and give up neuroses, because you can distinguish between them and the virtues, and you get some concentration. And then, you know, you really seriously start to go off into meditation retreat for years and years. Then you're going to get bliss just naturally, as Lama says. Just naturally, but you've got to be qualified, otherwise you're going to go berserk, as Lama usually puts it. And I remember interviewing Venerable Renee, you know, our dear friend Venerable Renee, who, as soon as he heard the Dharma, back at about the same time as me, I think, he met the Dharma, he went straight to meditation. I'm still waiting. Maybe I have to go next life, you know, before I start to meditate properly, you know, but he went straight into retreat mode. So, and I interviewed him in 1995 in Mandalay about one of his first retreats, 2.5 years at Urseling in Spain, in the Sierra Nevada, you know, where near where Lama Ursa was born. And it was a wonderful place there. His Holiness Dalai Lama blessed it in 1982. He called it the place of clear light, you know, and he said it reminded him of Tibet, a perfect place of meditation. So he did one of his long retreats there, and I interviewed him in 95 about this retreat. He became a monk in the late 70s. So he told me, first of all, this is an interesting point, first of all, he told me, one of the things he told me was, he said, there's no question, he maybe touched upon the 5th of the 9 stages of concentration meditation. And he said something, and he said just maybe touched upon it. He's there for 2.5 years. And in fact, he touched upon that after the first 6-9 months, but he couldn't get further. And that's another discussion. Again, that's not the discussion here. So the point is this, he said, and he was very humble, the pleasure, the joy his mind experienced, which is a natural consequence of getting your mind focused. This is the point, you know, when you go through the 9 stages and look at the descriptions of them, the intellectual descriptions, and then you look at Lama Yeshe describing the experiential side of it for the meditator, then, you know, even when you got some degree, some semblance of harnessing the sensory and the conceptual level of your mind, which is the levels we function at. And he said the pleasure or the joy he experienced was so superior to any joy he'd ever experienced through his senses. So the only person who's qualified, in other words, to handle that is a person who's trained. He said, there's no way, Robina, that I could have even gone into that retreat unless I'd already been a monk, done years of study, even years of giving teachings, as well as much purification, because you need to be ready. Otherwise, as Lama Yeshe puts it, you go berserk. Because if you don't understand what attachment is, you haven't harnessed attachment, you don't know the difference between attachment and love, you don't know the difference between delusions and virtues, you've never controlled your body and speech, your mind is completely berserk, and you might, just because you've got some karmic imprint from a past life, sit down to meditate and have a blissful experience, you will lose the plot, you will go mad. As Lama Yeshe says, you go to meditate and you end up in a psychiatric hospital because you don't know your mind, you don't know how to interpret what goes on, you know. The mind is super powerful. And if you haven't studied it, understood it, practiced for years, lived in vows, done lots of purification, when you are fortunate enough to taste the true nature of your own mind, even just beginning, a bit of bliss, and you lose the plot, I'm glad I don't get any bliss. I wouldn't know what to do with it. I'm waiting until I subdued my body and speech and lived in a few more vows, I think. Then I'll be ready. That's the answer, Lynn. All right? Good enough? Lynn? Answer me. Is that good enough as an answer?
I have to unmute. Okay. Yes. So I'm all of a sudden looking at my quote unquote blissful experiences as needing quotes around blissful. You know, they felt pleasant at the time, but now I'm investing in them.
But the attitude. So this is the point. So now, we're not even discussing Tantra yet. We're not even looking at Tantra. I mean, you know, we're not discussing that. This is Sutra practice. The Sutra practice to get concentration. The Hindus invented it. It's not even Buddhist. But the point that it points to, that's encouraging, is that this is our mind when it's even relatively, you know, if you're in meditation, doing your proper practice, living in your vows, you're a nice, good girl doing your job, then, you know, if you're so fortunate to taste the potential of your own mind every now and again, get a flavor of the joy of your mind, it's a wonderful, marvelous thing. So delight, but it's not a virtue and it's not a non-virtue. What makes a mess is when you get attached to it. So that's why you've got to, that's my point. If you can't distinguish between attachment and pleasure, they're separate states of mind. It's like a joke to say that because we can't separate, because all we want is the pleasure. We are junkies for the pleasant feeling. And so we can't even begin to have control because we We just go berserk. I mean, that's the point. If you haven't walked an attachment, you can't handle even a moment of pleasure. That's why Lama Yeshe would joke to us hippies back in this, when he first met us, you people don't even know how to have happiness. You're miserable. So he would even try to get us to have a happy mind. He'd try to lift us up by having picnics and parties. We'd all say, oh, Lama Yeshe loves picnics. Don't be ridiculous. He didn't love picnics. We poor self-pity hippies needed picnics to make them happy. Because when you start to hear Buddhism, you got to walk around with a long face and be serious. I've got to be renounced and I can't be happy, because we don't understand the difference between pleasure and love and attachment. These are really crucial, and we've got to study low rig. So kindly, you people keep using this general Venerable Palmo here. Is she still teaching? You're still teaching them all, Palmo? I hope so. How's your health, baby?
Not too much anymore.
How are
Recover.
you?
I'm doing better, but my mind, I kind of lost a bit of my mind, which isn't bad. It's much more quiet.
Well, that must be very pleasant. Is it pleasant?
Yeah. It's having half the thoughts that I used to have. It's just like much more spacious and very comfortable.
But it would be hard work to have to shoot off all the concepts and start talking about the Dharma. Then that would be a lot of effort, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I have to review. I mean, the basics. In general,
yes.
Like I can talk about.
Yes.
But like to go through points and all of that, that's a lot of work.
Well, may you enjoy this meditative stage of your life.
I gotta say though, I'm happy.
I'm so glad for Palma. And you're physically well? You're doing well physically?
Pardon?
You're doing well physically?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Good. I'm happy. Yeah. Well done. Good, Palma. Thank you so much.
It was a conversation about Palma's a recent experience she had that she shared with Mary Ellen and me, and I said, and that's what led to my question to you tonight, Robina, is I said, after you had this marvelous experience, did you want to have more? Did you want to get it and grasp at it? And
yeah.
How can I set it up so I can get this thing again? And her answer, which was just so inspiring, was never thought of that. Never.
There you go. So that's the proof it wasn't. That's it. That's the proof it wasn't attachment. That's the point, and that's why Venerable Renee said, I mean, the joy he experienced at the 4th or the 5th stage of single point of concentration was so superior. And that's what's interesting. And they also, I mean, I don't know, I'm so happy for Palmo, but that's when it isn't attachment, because everybody tells you, people who even have a moment of experience in meditation, they all say it's qualitatively completely different from the pleasure that's triggered by attachment, because as Lama Yeshe says, when we have pleasure triggered by attachment, which usually is the only pleasant feelings we know, it's very kind of berserk. It's very greedy. It's very gross. It's very uncontrolled. So therefore, I mean, you all know, even if you're just hungry for a piece of toast, you even forget what you've done. If you just hungrily put the toast in the mouth and you go, did I even eat that toast? Because you don't remember. Attachment makes you very mindless, like an animal, not being rude about animals. So when the joy is more pure and more subtle, it's more pleasurable. I mean, I'm only talking from theory here. I'm sorry, I haven't had the experiences. When you listen to Lama talk and listen to people like, there's Palmo, even example, then it's not to do with attachment. Then it's marvelous. And then you can delight. So I think the real question is, how do we bring this into our daily life? This is what we talked about Tantra, and this is talked about in Tantra. And that's why Lama Yeshe would teach us Tantra from day one. It was incredible that we have to learn, and we can even understand slightly, we can learn to have a happy mind. I mean, we need to learn to have a happy mind. So first of all, forget Tantra. But even if we go right back to understanding, see the delusions, look at attachment and anger, look at the distress our poor mind is experiencing. It is like a nightmare. Even when it's slight anxiety, it is so distressing. The key point the Buddha is making, first of all, and we can do this research and prove it to ourselves. Forget Tantra, okay? Forget meditating, okay? Forget ecstasy, forget rapture. Forget even a moment of nice meditation. Just look at ordinary daily life. The key point the Buddha is making, and this is scientific proof. No, you don't need to prove reincarnation to prove this. You don't need to prove karma. This is experiential fact. If you did your research in the day and tracked like on a graph, tracked your mind. You, not the external world, but you tracked your mind. So, like wake up in the morning, fairly pleasant, and then something went wrong outside, which triggered unpleasant because your husband snored or farted, and suddenly unpleasant. You track your mind, not the external object, the mind. So then the traffic was really bad, so that triggered your unhappy feelings, stress, anxiety, the wrong phone call came. So our trouble is because we're so addicted to believing the external phenomenon is the cause of the happy feeling and is the cause of the suffering feeling. We are addicted to those. Like I said before, all we do is remember the event. But if you could track your mind internally and notice anxiety, worry, jealous, angry, upset, kind, loving, compassionate, laughing, funny, happy. You do this graph of your mind internally, right? Now, then you check at the same time, you do your own research. How did each one of those feel? How did the anger feel? Using our word, feel. When you were loving, how did it feel? When you were feeling when you were generous, how did it feel? When you're relaxed, drinking your cup of tea and nothing's disturbing you, how did you feel? You will find that you were feeling happy when you were feeling loving and kind and compassionate, and you were feeling unhappy when you were feeling jealous and depressed and angry. But we know that, but we don't join the dots. But the point that Buddha's making is, guess what happiness comes from? Guess what happy feelings come from? Now, forget the future, is by having virtuous thoughts. It's so simple, it's embarrassing. We can't hear it because it sounds kind of, I don't want that kind of pleasure. I want pleasure with sex, please, or cake. We can't handle just having a happy mind. I mean, we know people like this. I know a person, we all know people like this. Just checking if she's here tonight. I don't want to talk about someone who's not here. Someone who is here should be embarrassed. But I know a person who's just this happy person. She's beaming, smiling. She helps poor people. She works really hard all day. She's all the time coming up with ideas how to help people. She's got this little group where she feeds poor people and gives the children things and raises money and gives them food. And you see her face, she's beaming from ear to ear all the time. She's just happy. And we think, that's just pot luck, Why do you think she's happy? She's not angry. I mean, some people in the same environment with all the people suffering, she's got these people who are suffering from COVID. She's got poor people, homeless people, but she's happy. She's not sitting there angry, worrying about what the politicians are going to do and why aren't people helping these poor people and how dare this happen? And I'm so crazy, I'm going to go mad. I'm not being rude because we all feel this way, but she's got a happy mind. I mean, what a miracle. That's a miracle. And she hasn't, I think she's due to past karma. She's born like this, and she continues to practice it. She's beaming from ear to ear and she helps people. She works all day. She's tired, but her mind's happy because her mind is not angry, is not depressed, is not anxious, is not jealous, is not having low self-esteem. It doesn't always follow if you see a person smiling and happy, that's what's happening. But when things go wrong, and that's the test, when you can still keep your mind happy, then you're on track, And Lama Yeshe kept trying to get us to be happy, just have a happy mind. Don't be scared of happiness. But we've got to know what happy feelings are and how to develop the ability to have them in the face, especially of problems. This is why we have to work on our delusions and our virtues. So Buddha's explanation is so technical, but so delicious, if we can really understand it. Then we know what's going on in our crazy mind, I can start to navigate it, be our own therapist, as Lama Yeshe says. So if you do have some pleasurable feelings, and that's the thing in meditation, if it's valid pleasure, not just greedy pleasure, or more crucially, if you know what to do with it and you understand your mind, then it will be extremely peaceful. And that's, everybody says that. The mind is incredibly peaceful, but also incredibly joyful. Whereas when we think of intense joy, it's kind of completely berserk because it's driven by attachment. And that's the trouble with attachment. If we have to rely upon the cake and Brian and the music and everything being perfect to get happy feelings, that's when you go crazy, because we can see you can not guarantee you can get everything out there, all your ducks in a row and have all the world perfect. You can't do that. So that's what attachment exactly is and why we suffer, Buddha says. He's not talking about suffering because you're happy. Happy is great. Go for it. As Lama Yeshe would say, the more pleasure, the better, dear. We'd think he's trying to be sinful. He's trying to get through to us, But if this is the point, what Buddha's saying about suffering. If you rely upon the cake to get happy feelings, if you rely upon Brian being smiling at you every day to get happy feelings, meaning that you can't have happy feelings if you don't get the cake, that's what samsara is, people. So we've got the ability, Buddha says, to have happy feelings all the damn time. We've just got to give up delusions and practice virtue. That's the solution. I mean, it sounds almost too simple. But if you think happiness is, like the 47 varieties of happiness, and we relate it to the external objects all the time, that's just samsaric happiness. It's not going to last. It's not being punitive. Buddha's not saying you shouldn't enjoy your chocolate cake. Please enjoy it. He's just saying if you think the cake is the cause of it, you're in trouble, baby. Because when you don't have the cake, or you eat too much cake, the pleasure's gone. So this is the type of analysis we have to do in the job of being our own therapist, to really unpack and unravel this stuff, And then we will be wonderfully fortunate, like Venerable Palmo, we're going to have happy feelings when we meditate. I'm still waiting, Palmo. I'm not in a hurry. It's okay. When I calm down, I think when I get very old, I might calm down. I don't know. We'll see. Like Palmo.
I'm still waiting too.
Oh, okay.
I'm still waiting too.
Good, darling. Exactly.
Except that I'm happy in the meantime. I'm happy in the meantime.
Good on you. I'm so pleased, Palmo. I'm so happy, darling.
Yeah, you just can't take anything, good, bad, whatever, too seriously.
That's all.
It doesn't affect your mind. How you feel physically doesn't need to affect your mind.
There you go. That's the liberating one, isn't it? The body. Yes. Yeah, that's a really powerful point, isn't it, Palmo? I'll just talk about that.
Yeah, kind of understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. Let's look at that. This is also the liberating one. This is when we can really get this one. Again, that's seeing the distinction between feeling either through your sensory consciousness or your mental consciousness, and let's say a pleasant feeling. And we all crave. Attachment's job is to find the object. This is the point. Attachment's job, this little vampire in us, is to find the object such that when we have contact with it, pleasure is triggered. So we have to go via the object all the time. We don't know how to get pleasure in our own mind. That's Buddha's skill. So the point is here, a really good point. And this, that we have to see the difference. The logic for us is, if you've got a pain in your knee, not to mention cancer or terrible things happening, we assume when bad things happen, we assume that means I have no choice but to be angry, to be unhappy, to be depressed, to be jealous, to have unhappy feelings. In other words, or to have the delusions, or just to have, we think we don't have a choice. But that's the revelation. That's the revelation. Pleasant feelings. In other words, the body isn't the mind. This is very shocking. The body isn't the mind. So when the body has sickness, like, I've got this, right now, when things go wrong, even mild things, forget serious ones. This is where we have to practice, the mild ones first. So I've got this skin rash right now. I had it about 30 years ago and it went away. It's called Peri Dermatitis. And apparently it happens in women from 15 to 40. I don't know what happened to me. I'm 76. Maybe I'm 77. And I've got it. So I don't know what happened. Maybe it thought I'm 40. It thought I'm 40, but it's very rude of it to come along, So anyway, and I've seen some online, they look so disgusting. Mine doesn't look so disgusting, but it's just like a big red mask here and all dry and chippy and kind of sort and painful, So anyway, as soon as got this pain, it's not that bad pain, it's a tiny pain, But as soon as we have it, automatically the mind has aversion, right? We have, because attachment only wants the nice things. Attachment wants to be, to have my old ordinary wrinkled face, not just a red wrinkled face. You get used to that. As you get older, you get used to it, But, as soon as pain comes in the body, attachment is just getting what it doesn't want, isn't it? So then naturally the feeling to arise, the delusion to arise, sorry, not a feeling, the delusion to arise is aversion. And we'd assume that's natural. Well, of course I'm angry. I'm sick, we'll say. Of course I'm angry. I've got pain, we will say. That's the logic of ego. We don't question. And that's why the level of practice in the Mahayana path that's called transforming problems into happiness is so outrageous. I mean, when you hear about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when he got his stroke in 2011, I was there in Australia. when day he was in teaching at this big center we have in 2 hours north of Melbourne, a couple hundred people there. And he suddenly got all blurry with his speech and they put him into the hospital. He had a stroke. And that night, Roger, they were filming and they sent a little video message of Rinpoche. And even that evening, there was Rinpoche drugged out of his mind with all these drugs, slurring like he was like a drunken, senile person. But he was laughing the whole time. And everybody apparently in the hospital, all these Catholic nuns could not get over these crazy monks. There was Roger sitting up day and night in a chair next to Rinpoche. Rinpoche's completely got this stroke. He laughs the whole time, joyful. His young Tibetan attendants are all laughing. People, when they have a stroke, they'll have mental breakdown. The family are weeping and crying, and these ridiculous monks are laughing. Just Lama's open. It seemed like his joy increased. It's too hard to understand this. It seems like, what do I know, that his compassion kind of went up 4 million%, and his joy. I mean, they talk about bodhisattvas experience joy. It's too hard to weird. It's too weird, isn't it? But I saw the evidence of it. It's hard to imagine it, So my little pathetic face, I got to work every day because it feels sore, it's itchy, and not to mention it makes you look ugly. I mean, ugly enough, but if it's on your bottom, you don't care because no one sees it. So it's vanity as well. These tiny things that happen. So then, as Palmo's simple point, that's just my body. What's that got to do with my mind? This is a revelation when we can begin to hear it. And this is the space we have to start to make. Just because my face hurts, who says, and just because it does cause an unpleasant feeling, it's called pain. That's called an unpleasant feeling. But the extra piece is, the added piece is, we assume you're therefore going to have aversion to it. We assume, therefore, you'll be angry or upset. That's the point that we have to change. So yes, there is pain, but I can change the way I interpret it. That's what practice is. This is just a tiny example. And every day we're going to have something like that. It's either the physical body itself. And often when it comes to the physical body itself, we really feel we don't have a choice. Whereas, let's say, your husband's mean to you. Somehow because it's just his mind and his words, we somehow feel we can manage that. But not when it's your own body, because we just assume the body is the mind. But no, it's not true. You can change your attitude towards everything. You can reinterpret your feeling. The feeling is there, unpleasant feeling. It's a fact, it's an unpleasant feeling. But what is fascinating, because anger is on top of the unpleasant feeling, we think it's all the same thing. But no, the unpleasant feeling is merely the pain in the face. The anger is another whole thing, and that's what makes it worse. It's the anger, the resistance to it. The wishing it wasn't there. How dare it not be there? It is not fair. I do not deserve. That's what causes the real suffering. The anger is what causes the real suffering, not the pain. This is very shocking to hear, but we can experiment. That's why you do have some people. I mean, there's this friend I'm mentioning before. She's living in a poor place. She's got poor people around her, people sick, people suffering. She's responsible for them. Some people have incredible stress, incredible anxiety, incredible anger about it. And they think that they're suffering because of the poverty. No, they're suffering because of their stress, their aversion, their anxiety, their anger. This is very shocking to hear because we go, but it's normal to be angry. What do you mean I'm suffering because of my anger? Look at those bad politicians. No, you can change your mind. This gets right back to the basics of Dharma practice, Of course, it's hard work. And this is, again, the necessity to unpack and unravel these different thousands of thoughts that are all raging on every second. This is the job of being your own therapist. It's a technical job. It's like you got to use the microscope of your own mind on your own mind and see all the components, the negative ones, the positive, and the mechanics. They're all working together. This is what you really get the skill to do when you get some concentration in meditation, Any other questions, people?
Robina, there's a couple questions in the chat box.
Good.
David Lee's asked if you could talk about the transition between the refuge and merit field.
Transit, so I'm confused.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe David, if you could unmute yourself.
What's been going?
Honorable Robina,
Yes,
thank you for
David.
your
Good.
teaching.
Good. Talk to me.
Yes, specifically, my question was about the visualization. When we're in a practice and we take refuge in the refuge field,
Yes.
it seems as if the refuge field, we're not spending too much time there, but there are specific beings there. And
Yeah.
before we know it, they disappear and we're in the merit field.
Oh, I see. Now you're talking about Lama Chirpa, aren't you? You're talking about doing Guru Puja.
Yeah, and I'm confused because it seems as if some of the same beings are in
No,
both.
no, it's true. It's true. It's basically, they're just, both of those are a family tree coming from this long lineage of all the holy beings going back to their teacher and to their teacher and to his and to theirs. And there are different different groups of, they're all merit fields. They're all your field of merit, which literally means the ground in relation to which, the ground in which you sow the seeds in relation to these people. So there are all kinds of different practices have different merit fields. The one that you're talking about in the refuge, it's sure, it's very brief there. And then you told the Lama Chirpa, but every deity you do, every practice you do has its own merit field, has its own practitioners, its own people, its own yogis, its own deities. There are thousands of them, and it's really elaborate. And most of us, unless we're got concentration, meditation completely down, we won't be able to remember most of these. Most of us can't. So the best you can do, the first one, they're all basically, they're all merit fields. One is the refuge merit field. One is the Vajrayana one for the Guru Puja. Another, there's different practices. You go to the Nyingmapas, they're going to have another merit field because each one has got these different actual holy beings tracking back, as well as the Buddhas. There's different Buddhas, different yogis. So it's all really quite complicated. There are hundreds of merit fields. If you can see all relating to the practice, different practices. Are you with me in general, David?
Yeah, when I read Pabanka Rinpoche, day 4 and day 5 specifically, it's his visualizations are extremely intense.
Of course they are. They're unbelievably complicated. 99% of us don't even do them. But some people who've got really good concentration, they are able to. They've got this really good memory and can literally construct in their mind. I mean, that's when you've really got concentration that you can do that. But the best you can do is, he's teaching at the top level, So the best we can do, even if you just visualize Buddha for the refuge one, and then you just have to do your best, we have to do our best. Most of us, it's only when we've got concentration or you study really seriously hard that you then learn them all. You have to memorize them and see what they look like and draw the picture of them and then try to visualize. That's quite advanced, David. Most people don't do that. They're not capable. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and on a simple level, it seems, I think, as I said, Rinpoche was saying, when the wisdom beings appear, then you can make the transition between the refuge and the merit.
No, it's not. I don't know what that means. Those words are a bit confusing to me. All I know is it's like this. No. I'll tell you what I understand, David. In the first part of Lama Chirpa, every sadhana you do, whether it's Lama Chirpa, that particular one, whether it's any of the deities, you've got these 3 different sections. The first section is called the preliminary practices. And then you've got the actual practice. And then you have the concluding practices. They're the 3 divisions. And it's exactly the same here. So in the Guru Puja, in Lama Chirpa, the first part is called the preliminary practices. So normally in that, here there is indeed this field of these gurus. The Buddha is in the middle. There's those Buddhas on the one side, another lot of Buddhas on the other side, all the different yogis coming right down to the present. You visualize all of them. It's a very elaborate little family tree related particularly to the sutra practice here of bodhicitta and refuge. That's the preliminary practice, and it's got its own merit field. Then you would dissolve that into you, and you do this meditation on emptiness. If you've taken highest yoga tantra empowerment, you would learn to know how to do that dissolution of those people inside you, and you'd meditate on emptiness. And then your next step is now you come to the actual practice. And now, after coming out of that meditation, you now come to the actual practice, and now you visualize, yes, this next field of merit, which is related to the particular practice called Lama Chirpa. And the center there is Lama, our Lama looking like Tsongkhapa with his pointy hat, Lama Lozang, our Lama as Lozang, which is Tsongkhapa with his pointy yellow hat, Tumwang, which is one of the words for Buddha, Shakyamuni, you visualize him holding his begging bowl, and then at his heart is the tantric aspect of Buddha called Doji Chang. So that's called Lama Lozang Tubuang Doji Chang. He's the central figure. And then surrounding him, all the hundreds of different Buddhas and deities and the holy beings and all the yogis. You know, that's the merit field there. So that's called, in the actual practice, you set up that visualization, you imagine. And then that is, they call this the commitment. It's like pretend. It's not the real Buddhas yet. So then you invite the wisdom being. So what that means is you visualize from the heart of all those beings, from the hung in their heart, light going out to all the 10 directions, hooking the energy of the actual Buddhas who live in their pure lands around the universe, it's hooking the energy of the actual Buddhas to come back with that light and absorb back into the hearts of all those beings. And then now that becomes non-dual, as it says. Your visualization, called the commitment beings, now merge and become oneness with the wisdom beings. And now that's the actual merit field now. And then you proceed to create merit by doing the 7 limbs and all the requests and the prayers.
Yeah.
What's your problem?
At the end of your practice, the wisdom beings return to their abode and the commitment beings stay with you. But
What's
I
your
mean,
question?
well,
So
I
what's your
mean,
question,
I don't think I need to take it to that level. So
no, just I
take it
think the
back a
thing,
few
I mean,
steps.
to do what? Say it again, David. What?
We'll take
do
it
what?
back a few steps to keep it simpler.
I think, I mean, the thing is, these teachings, you know, these lamas always, what I've noticed since the beginning, these lamas always teach at the top level. And then in our culture, we get a bit depressed about that. We think, well, how am I supposed to understand that? But Lama, see, this is where Lama Yeshe was different. Every Lama has their own style. So Lama Yeshe, he never led elaborate things like that. He never said words. He kept it simple for our minds. And as we progress, then we can take hold of these things, you know. So in the beginning, most of us get very distressed because we think, I can't understand this. What's all this about? I'm completely confused. And we get really lost. But all we're going to do is read it, think about it, David, try and understand it a little bit theoretically and put the imprints in our mind, become familiar with it. And that is part of the cause of our actually being able to accomplish it as we progress. That's the best attitude, don't you think, David?
Thank you so much.
But do you agree with that?
No, I agree.
I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm a hopeless meditator, David. I wouldn't have a clue visualizing all these merit fields. But I've got some friends, like a friend of mine in prison, a Mexican ex-gangster. You cannot believe his practice. And I innocently said to him one day, please tell me your practice. Well, I got 7 typed pages. He had this detailed merit field. He remembered every single one. I could not believe this man. He was so humble. I mean, I wanted to prostrate to him. It was unbelievable, David. So people who've got strong karmic connection from past meditating, they can just pick it up. It's like these little children on YouTube who can play Bach at the age of 5. It's the same thing, David. They've got strong imprint. So we have to be humble and recognize we don't have we've got imprint, but we haven't got much good memory. So we just put the imprints in, do our best, you know. I know one retreat I had, one retreat I had to do, one of the deities had a very elaborate merit field. I mean, it was 3 months. I was exhausted. I had to have a rest afterwards because it's so exhausting visualizing all these deities, trying to remember every damn name, who they are, where they fit, what they look like. It was exhausting. But I tried to do it properly, you know. It's really tough work. This is very high stuff, you know. These great yogis, you can do this effortlessly. So we just have to aspire, David. What were you going to say?
Yeah, well, Pabonka Rinpoche, he was elaborate on day 4 and then 3 times as elaborate on day 5.
That's right, exactly. That's what they do. They teach it 3 times.
And I mean, if you can remember Manjushri, Maitreya, Vajradhara, and
Good enough.
yeah, I think I'll stick with that.
That's it, David. Exactly. You got the right view. But aspire. No, one day when you got single point of concentration, you'll do it falling off a log easy. So aspire, David. You're wonderful. Taking it all so seriously. I admire you. Thank you, David. Very kind.
The next question, Venerable Robina, comes from Mary Ellen, asks in the chat box, in conversation with her dear friend, Venerable Chodron, just before she began long retreat, she told us about a few others nearby who are lay people living in, quote, contemplative lifestyle.
This is up in Colorado, right? Isn't it? We went there recently. What was the name of the place? That's called what? What's it called again? We went?
Crystal.
Crestone, that's right. A whole bunch of meditators up there. Venerable Children's doing that. Yeah. So what's the question?
Question is, what does it mean to live a contemplative lifestyle?
Well, if they are, they're in retreat. And if they're not doing like a proper labeled 3-year retreat with a particular practice, and you can't, you for doing those retreats, you start on a certain day, you have certain parameters, you decide in advance who you're going to talk to, what contact you'll have, and you do your certain number of sessions every day, you complete your 3 years, and you've done the retreat. But there are other ways. Some people can just live in retreat. Some people do that. They live all their lives just quietly in their own house, doing their practice every day, but not a formal retreat. They could go shopping if they wanted, but many people live like that. And in Crestone, that's exactly what's happening. Many people. There's apparently the history, I'm not quite sure about it. Maybe Charmaine can remember. Some people 50 years ago or 40 years ago bought all these hundreds of acres and then gradually started selling them to people on the condition that they use it for meditation. So lots of people, monks and nuns and lay people, are living up there in these strict retreats, but also informal retreats. So it just means you do your 4-6 sessions a day, you do your work, you eat your dinner every day, but you don't muck around much. You wouldn't watch telly. You wouldn't waste too much time. You live in practice. I think that's what that means in a general sense, Mary Ellen. But a more strict one, as you know, if it's a tantric retreat or a Lamrim retreat, especially the tantric ones, you want to accumulate this energy over 3 years, certain number of mantras, certain number of practices. You don't do less practices every day. You stick to your parameters, your perimeters, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense, Mary Ellen?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah. What else, people? Huh? Any other questions? We've got a 2-hour job today, haven't we, Mary? It's not a 1 hour today, is it? It's 2, isn't it? Right, Mary?
1.5.
1.5. Okay, good. All right. So
90 minutes.
Good. Okay. More questions, folks?
Yes, I'll ask
Mary?
a question, Venerable Robina.
Yes,
Thank you for being here tonight. Can you talk about filling statues and consecrating statues and the importance of that?
Yeah, I mean, okay, all of this is so, okay. All that's from Tantra, obviously, but you can also have Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay, so, yeah, okay. Interestingly, my friend Andy Weber, who's an artist, he's a Tanka painter, and also my friend Peter Griffin, who's a statue maker. They're amazing. They're students of Rinpoche. Well, actually, yeah. So the term I think the term in Tibetan for a sculptor, what we call a sculptor, a person who makes statues, is actually Buddha maker. They're called a Buddha maker. So there's this amazing, all the statues we see, this is Thai, so it's different, but you see the typical Tibetan ones, there's a very particular style that is used. That's really the artisans in Kathmandu. They're these Nawaris. They're the ones who are famous over centuries for being excellent at these. They're always the best ones. There's a very particular style. There's a particular shape, kind of relationship between this and that and how it should be, and the face. There's a very particular way they make them. And then they're done in a certain kind of way. And then and then it's done. It's made, painted already. Okay. So there's a sort of developed over the centuries, a way of doing these things. So basically, a Buddha statue made of metal, let's say, and painted a certain way. And then at some point, when it's finished, then you have to, they say it's not a real Buddha yet. So in the same way I talked to David and said, when you set up your visualization in your meditation, and then the light goes out and you're inviting the actual Buddhas from all the abodes of the universe, and then you imagine all the energy of those wisdom beings, the actual Buddhas, comes back with the light and absorbs into all the Buddhas in your merit field. And then you visualize, and now you think, now it's the real Buddha. It's just like with the statues. They say it doesn't become a real Buddha until you fill it with certain things, with certain blessed things. You put certain mantras at different places, and you fill it up with different mantras and different holy things. You can make offerings and put into it, and then it's sealed, and then special prayers and pujas are done where you do exactly the same thing. You invite the actual Buddhas to come and literally dissolve into that statue, and then you visualize, now you imagine this is the actual Buddha. So all of this, the only way this ever makes any sense is by understanding emptiness. Without understanding emptiness, it just seems like superstition, and also understanding what a Buddha is. So the actual Buddha is the word Dharmakaya, truth body in Sanskrit. is what refers to the actual enlightened mind. So when you're fully developed, your mind is fully enlightened, all the delusions gone, all the virtues perfected, your mind pervades the universe because it's not physical. How can it not pervade the universe? How can something not physical be confined by space or time or matter? It can't. It has infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, infinite power. That's the actual Buddha. That's the actual Buddha. But we're gross. We live in this gross body. We have gross senses, and senses need things to see and taste and touch and smell and listen to. We're gross beings, very gross beings in this desire realm. So the Buddhas, out of great compassion, and there are trillions of Buddhas, manifest in forms and shapes to benefit sentient beings. So, you know, for example, the Dalai Lama's body, that body that we see, this nice Tibetan gentleman, you know, we see with our eyes and hear with our ears. That's if he is the Buddha, they say he is the Buddha, his mind is the Buddha. So he has manifested as a Tibetan man. So the Buddhas can also manifest as statues, this is called the Nimanakaya. So the supreme Nimanakaya is the Nimanakaya emanation body. So that's Shakyamuni Buddha, this one. He's a depiction of that emanation body, the actual founding Buddhas. The next supreme emanation body would be Maitreya. But the Buddha, that Dharmakaya, has the capacity to manifest in any shape or form they like. They can manipulate all the physical elements of the universe easily. Even the lowest level bodhisattva can manifest as 100 different forms simultaneously. So, but a statue, in all the holy objects, as the Tibetans call them, as Lama Zopa refers to them. So a statue is a depiction of the Nimanakaya. It's like you make a statue of your mummy. You got a photo of your mummy, and then you make a statue of your mother. Well, there's, you know, it reminds you of your mummy. It's got a good function. There it is. It reminds you of your mummy, you know. Well, the statue tells you the Buddha, but there's a way of making it an actual Buddha. And the more confidence you have that is the Buddha. I mean, hear these marvelous stories, you know, about people who've got real faith in the Buddhas, and the Christians are the same. So then people have got real faith. Like there's one, Lama Zopa tells a story in the his death book, about one old sick person in Hong Kong somewhere. And he had his medicine Buddha statue next to him. And he didn't have his medicine, and he couldn't get out of bed. He was too sick. And he looked over, and there was the medicine Buddha holding his medicine for him. I mean, you hear endless stats. You hear wonderful stories. There's wonderful stories in Tibet. It was so hilarious. I tell you, Tibet's hilarious. This is the point I'm getting to. They've got like 100% total, complete confidence. The Buddhas are everywhere, and the Buddhas can manifest all over the place. So there are things that they call self-emanations of Buddhas in Tibet, in other holy places in India as well, and the mountain. So out of the mountain, you see these images of the Buddha will evolve gradually. They're self-emanations. No one sculpts them. No one carves them. The Buddha image comes out of that mountain gradually, and then they paint them. There's an actual real Buddha there, you know. I've got a beautiful photo of one of Tsongkhapa, which is a complete self-emanation coming out of the rock, and they paint it. It's a perfect, beautiful picture of Tsongkhapa. I've lost the negative, unfortunately. I took it when I was in the 80s when I was there. So many of these, and that's because of the faith of the holy being, all the Tibetans. They've got incredible confidence in the presence of Buddhas everywhere. They completely understand the Buddhas can manifest in any form they like. So there's all these. It was like going to this magical mystery land, Tibet. It's so hilarious, you know. We went with Lama Zopa, a whole bunch of us. We go to all the monasteries. We have all these guided tours, you know, these statues that talked, and statues that walked, and statues that grew. You know, I know the first day I arrived from a different place. I came for just a week to spend time with Lama Zopa, and he had about 70 people. They'd come across the mountains from Kathmandu to Tibet. But I flew from Hong Kong just for a week. It was when I was working for Wisdom and I was very busy. So I came for a week, and I arrived in Lhasa about, you know, late that day. It's like living in it's like the moon. This is back in the 80s. It was like the moon, because the ridiculous, you know, Beijing state government made everybody use the same time. So it was really like 6 p.m. in Lhasa, but they had to use Beijing time. So it was called midnight. It was like ridiculous, bright light, you know. So anyway, I heard that they'd all gone to the Jokang and were doing Lama Chöpa Puja. So I found my way to the Jokang, and I sat there, and Geshe Sopa was there, Lama Zopa was there. I was so happy to be there. And at the end of the puja, I'd arrived late. Then Lama Zopa started walking out, and I wanted to let him know I was here. So I was walking out this ancient kind of these long chain mail curtains. It's literally medieval, you know. And I'm walking along this corridor, and all these little, like in big Catholic cathedrals, these side chapels, but these are more medieval. These side chapels, as you're walking along this corridor, and these different statues. And suddenly, and I sort of called out to Rinpoche ahead of me. Rinpoche, it's Robina here, I just arrived. So he starts spontaneously giving me a talk as we kept walking about these different statues. And there's one particular statue of Chenrezig, and then he said, and he grew taller than the caretaker. I mean, I was so moved, I burst into tears, you know, it was so moving. There's this statue of Tara, like this fellow, for example, fell down the stairs and he called out, "Oh, mother," because that's how they refer to Tara. And the statue called out, "I'm here." There's a series of statues, the 16 Arhants. And one of the earlier Dalai Lamas was going along blessing all the statues, and he didn't get all the way. And the last fellow, the last 16 Arhants said, "What about me?" He's called the statue called "What About Me?" His hands out, you know. You hear these outrageous, wonderful stories. And it's like, because these Tibetans have complete confidence in the presence of the Buddha mind, pervading the universe, manifesting in mountains, in statues, talking, walking. I mean, it's like outrageous, you know. I couldn't believe it. That mightn't be the answer you wanted, Mary, but that's my answer. Okay, so the mind creates everything. The mind makes that up. In the same way, this is the four, okay, honey, this is the 4 elements, right? Well, so is a piece of metal statue, it's the 4 elements. Why can't a Buddha mind move into that, you know? Why not? Why can't a Buddha mind do anything? That's what Buddha minds are capable of. But you've got to understand what that means first. You've got to understand what a Buddha is by studying the Bodhisattva teachings, you know? Will that do? Good. What else, people? Any other questions? What a strange, curious night tonight, getting into the esoterica. Any other questions? Nothing. Dave, nothing there, Matt?
Nothing at the moment, no.
Well, I'll tell you a naughty story, though, when I was in Tibet. Those days, I was living in London. I was working for Wisdom Publications, and I used to wear lay clothes. I didn't wear my robes for a couple of years. When I went to teachings, I did. So when I went to Tibet, of course, I wore lay clothes. And then someone that evening had invited me to come to stay at the posh hotel in, I don't know which one it was, some posh hotel in Lhasa. So I was going to be there to have a meal with them. We'd had time off from the teachings, you know. And I put my lay clothes on. And then who should walk in the room but Geshe Sopa and Lama Zopa? I nearly died. And they just laughed. I could not believe I was so mortified, you know. I'll never forget. That's a confession. Not that you care, but I'm just telling you. They both just laughed at me. I'd never even met Geshe Sopa before. So I was so inauspicious, you know. But another story, back when I was Lama Yeshe's security guard in 1982, when he invited His Holiness to Europe, and Lama Yeshe appointed 10 of us to be security guards, 5 of us girls and 5 boys. Lama was so outrageous. And then we had to wear lay clothes. So, we wore lay clothes. I had lippy on, wore lipstick, and I had these nice maroon boots up to my knee-high boots. We wore these little uniforms, and we'd walk around with His Holiness, you know. And then when I saw Geshe Rabten, one of my lamas, he looked at me very sternly. "Are you still a nun?" And I said, "Yes, Geshe Lama." But Lama Yeshe would look at me and laugh and say, "I think I like you better like that," with my lipstick and lay clothes on, you know. So there you go. All depends on the lama. Anyway, any more questions? No? Nothing more? Nothing more? Nothing more? No questions? Phyllis, Rochelle's there. Hello, Rochelle, darling. How are you? Hope you're well. Are
Hi,
you well?
Venerable.
How is everything, darling?
It's
Rochelle and her partner have been trying to get a baby, and they lost one, the poor darlings. How is everybody? How are both of you?
she ended up having to have a surgery 2 days ago, so we're just kind of in that.
You're trying
space.
again. You're still trying again.
We'll try again in April.
Okay, darling. But you're keeping perky about it. You're being optimistic.
I'm definitely hopeful, and
Good,
I'm also
What?
I've just been in a really interesting space the last couple of days. I feel like I'm waking up a little bit and having some really big realizations, and it's
Good,
pretty
Raquel.
trippy.
I'm very
Yeah.
happy. Yeah.
Listening to a lot of chanting and just trying to silence all the BS.
Good, darling. Keeping your mind happy, in other words, as we were talking. That's what you're trying to do, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if it's happy right now or more neutral, just kind
That's
of
good. Staying steady.
attempting to.
Good. Well done, Rochelle. Well done. girl.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm working on it. I'm
Good on
working
you.
through it.
I'm
Thank you.
so happy, Rochelle. Happy to hear it, darling.
I'm
Love to,
grateful to be here.
love to both of you, darlings.
Yeah, you too.
Good, sweetheart. Thank you, Rochelle. So glad to hear you. What else, people? I can make up something to talk about. I know that, but I can't think of anything. Come on, you people. Ask me.
Doris is asking for more stories, Venerable Vina.
Oh, come on. Stories, bad ones or good ones. Well, I don't know. It's hard work working on your mind. That's all I can say. Like Rochelle's talking. I've known Rochelle for like 10 years or more, and we go in waves, don't you? You have a certain period where you kind of think you're doing well, and then suddenly, things go wrong and you crash again. And you just got to keep moving. This is the thing that I really learned. The one thing I've learned. They talk about perseverance, talk about joyful effort. Well, I'm waiting for the joy part, but effort is really clear, I think. Don't you realize? I think we've got to know, effort. We've got to make effort. We all know if we make effort incrementally, step by step, a little bit at a time, like talking to David, then, results come. We get all excited often in the beginning. And then something goes wrong, and then we kind of, we lose the plot. But to stay steady, that's like Rochelle was saying. I think that's so important, just to keep moving. But I think what gives us confidence to do that isn't just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, but knowing that every millisecond you're sowing seeds in your mind. So every time you make effort, every time you try to be kind, every time you work on your mind, you're sowing seeds. It doesn't go astray. It's not wasted. We tend to think, oh, well, I wake up another day, all the past is gone, and all I've got is left is memories. That's very depressing. No, you haven't just got memories. You've got really solid, delicious karmic seeds in your bank vault that every day, and they will not go astray. So you delight in your effort because you've sowed seeds. I mean, it's a very powerful thing to imagine that every day you do the gardening and you wake up next day and there's still nothing there. Of course you give up. But you know that everything that goes into your garden, you nourish it, you work with it, you can grow it, and you pull out the weeds every day. That's your work. You mightn't see the results immediately. That's okay. But when you know you're sowing seeds. So I said to David, even if you can't possibly visualize the entire merit field yet, you just listen to it, hear it, it goes in, Because one of the ways the mind functions, I guess Yitashi in London said this, and Lama's over said something similar. Every second you see or hear or taste or touch anything, every second your mind is working about anything, nothing goes astray. Everything is stored in your memory. That's how come you can do or think anything in the future. So we should be glad about that. And then we train the mind to put in, the second one is lots of karmic seeds, positive thoughts, positive seeds. Make effort one step at a time. And then you look back and you realize you've been moving forward. You look back, you realize you've been moving forward one step at a time. That's the whole point. Then you never give up. Because it's not logical to give up, because your mind will last forever anyway. Or you might say depressing if you're depressed, because you've got this potential. And that's why it's so important to read, to hear stories, to hear about the great yogis, to read the marvelous stories about our mind, and to read the stories about, like Milarepa, or to hear the examples of what people have accomplished. Then I can do it too. That's what's so powerful. Or even recently, Barbara, wasn't it? Somebody, I think Barbara said, I'm not giving her away, but she'd heard some teachings that she couldn't understand. That's how we all are. It's like you go to some of the teachings and you haven't got a clue. I mean, but the Tibetans understand this. They, many of the Tibetans aren't educated. These days it's different, but they would travel for weeks with their picnic, and they'd go to the Dalai Lama's teachings, and they'd sit there for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, listening, but they haven't got a clue what he's saying. They don't care, because they know the imprints are going in, and they know they've got those in their little bank vault. So then you can nourish those later. Do you understand my point, Barbara? I'm not trying to give you away, but it's just how we all are, sweetheart, That's how it is. So when you realize that, just listen and accept it, and know you've heard it once, and before you know it, then one day it'll come. That's how it works. You've got to have that view. Do you understand, Barbara?
I do. Yep. Thank you.
But so on the one hand, we listen to as much as we can and take it in, and then begin to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, so we know where it all fits. So gradually move towards it. That's the point, Do you understand? So just keep moving, Barbara. That's the main point I tell you, darling. Anyway, I don't know. There's no more to talk about. I have to teach you in 15 minutes.
Venerable Robina, Rochelle writes that she has another question or a
Good,
question.
good, Rochelle. What is it, darling?
So for the last 90 minutes, I've been thinking about, as you're talking about attachment, and I'm struggling with how to not be attached to the outcome we had that this
Yeah.
baby would, like it's just so hard to understand why, like bad things happen. And this feels like a bad thing in my body and my mind.
You mean losing that baby?
Yeah.
See, that's where I know I mentioned it briefly in an email, but this is where, Rochelle, okay, see, in the end, look at the world. We've got all these everybody's got different viewpoints. So if you're a devoted Muslim, and you understand my point, it's a viewpoint. So if you're a devoted Muslim, 100% devoted, you would know it's the will of God. You would just know that, and that would give you peace. So that's maybe not the view you have. So it's up to you to decide what view you think is one you want, because we're all desperate for answers. We always are. Don't you think in our world, the biggest question we ask is, why did that happen? I find that very curious, because we ask that question, meaning we want an answer. So in a way, Rochelle, that's up to that's up to us. I mean, you've got your Christian background, your daddy's answers. You've been around me for years. You've got the Buddhist answers. So in the end, it's up to you to work with whatever answers make sense to you. That's why for me, we've always just talked like this. Over the years I've known you, but I've never forced this stuff on top of you. It's up to you. So the Buddhist explanation, as you know, is that baby. There's three of you in this thing. There's three of you in the scenario. There's you, your beloved wife, and the baby. There are the three of you. And three of you have got this strong karmic history with each other. Okay, that baby didn't, there's no penis, none of your penis is involved. There's that that egg and sperm comes from one man's sperm and your egg, wasn't it? Your egg this time.
Yeah, my eggs, yeah.
So that's just the physical. In the West, we think that makes the baby. No, that's just the house. Those two came together. And then this third person, this consciousness, this being, this precious girl, it turned out to be a girl, right? You said?
Yeah, Isabella.
Okay, that consciousness, Isabella, that consciousness came not more than a few weeks before. That consciousness that you've labeled Isabella, when it joined that egg and that sperm, Rochelle, that consciousness was in another body. Who knows when you met them in last life? It could have been 50 lifetimes ago. It could have been a last life that you had a karmic connection, the two of you, with that particular person. It's very specific. That particular person died like a miracle at the time of their death, a karmic seed to be born a human and to go to your egg and sperm, honey. They got she had strong karma with you. That particular being, she had the karma to be born as a human. She won the lottery. But there's other ways that karma ripens. The other way, in this case for your baby, for Isabella, there's another type of karma that's called experiences similar to the cause. So one, she got a rebirth, which is the main one. She got the human body. She won the lottery. But she had another karma, and that's why you two didn't do a single thing wrong. There's nothing wrong with what you did and nothing wrong with the womb that's involved. She had the karma because of we got billions of karmic seeds from billions of lifetimes. This is the Buddha's view, darling. And then one of those karmic seeds to die young was what triggered. So she got your womb, she won the lottery, or Megan's womb, but she had the karma to die young, meaning at the few weeks in the fetus. She didn't have the karma to have a long life. So there's nobody doing anything to anyone. No, it's not, you didn't do anything wrong. She didn't do anything wrong, and it's just the way all you three came together. And the suffering you're experiencing is because you had a karmic connection with her, and then naturally you're looking forward to her birth. You were so excited, you wanted her to come, you're preparing to have her. So all that, natural expectation is shattered because she suddenly dropped dead, So, I mean, it's just because, of course, it's painful. But it's the main thing, have the grief, feel the pain, but don't feel that it's like it shouldn't have happened, or what should we have done instead, or what could we have done, or what did the doctor do? Because we're desperate to try and find a thing to blame. But sometimes this is karma takes care, Lama Yeshe says. So not to be complacent, fix the physical condition. Maybe the womb was perfect. Maybe the egg was perfect. Maybe the sperm was perfect, but it was her karma to die, sweetheart. So sometimes the sperm mightn't be good. Sometimes the egg mightn't be good. You understand what I'm saying, darling? So that's the Buddhist view. But sweetheart, I'm never trying to push that onto you. That's up to you if you want to work with that, to give you courage to keep working, to do your Tara prayers, to try again. And then just but when you do understand the attachment side, the more we anticipate something, we know that, then the more it doesn't happen, the more shattered we are. So you're human. You can't stop that. You can't turn into a robot. But learn from the experience and then keep trying, keep doing everything you can to have a baby, Why can't you use your womb? You don't want to give birth to the baby?
Yeah, we might try at the same time in a couple months.
Well, both of you get pregnant together. Have a baby.
We might.
Why not?
We have five
very efficient
having male embryos on ice.
It's very efficient having 2 wives. You can have babies each. You can, double your effort.
Yeah, we have 5 male embryos from my last retrieval.
So you might even have a boy, you think, this time?
We might have a boy. I think that the practice or the journey for me is the attachment to my wife's happiness, because she's
still shattered,
and also my attachment to the baby, and I think it's,
of course.
Yeah, the practice for me is, how do you stay happy or even neutral when your attachment doesn't get what it wants at such an extreme level.
That's where your job is then, because you're the one. If you can be more stable, yourself, if you're both drowning and she's panicking, there's no benefit in you panicking as well, honey. Someone has got to stay stable, and that will give you courage. When you can reach out and be compassionate to somebody else, that gives you courage, and then that'll give them courage. But and the thing is, you can try as much as you can to stop her suffering, but it's up to her to. But if you can be courageous and be like a rock of Gibraltar for her, and then it's still up to her to do what she can, and not take it on herself and not think she did something wrong.
Yeah.
That's really important, So
yeah,
important.
I think I've been in that space for 4 weeks, and then it's like, as soon as she got wheeled back for surgery on Wednesday, because that was 4 weeks later.
Yes.
It's like I totally lost it. As soon as someone else was caring for her for a moment, I finally allowed myself to grieve.
Oh, I see. Well, that's good, darling. So you keep moving.
Do you recognize this painting behind me?
Oh, look at that. Oh, yes. It's an Aboriginal painting that Rachel bought at one of our auctions. We must have an auction in South Australia. I've got about 10 Aboriginal paintings. They're very rare in Australia, in America. Thank you, darling. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
Thank you, sweetheart. It's time to go home now. Will that do for people? A gossipy night? Yes, Mary? Good enough? Thank you, darlings.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been fabulous.
Good. I'll just sing a little prayer. Jung Trubs, and may compassion grow in the hearts of all. And these seeds we've planted in this 90 minutes, none will go astray. So be very happy. And we're going to nourish these trees with our efforts, step by step, so we can develop our amazing potential, so we can be a benefit to others. Jung Trub, Sem Chog Rinpoche, Ma Kie Panam, Kie Gu Chig, Kie Pan Yam Pa Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne, Gong Du, Pelba Shog. So tomorrow, just to say, we're doing the precepts with Rinpoche, how marvelous. And I'll just lead the prayers and things. And then at our workshop tomorrow, is you know what it is, it's something about vows. We don't seem to know much about vows, and we don't really learn what our vows are. We don't learn what our commitments are. And I mean, I just think and so that's what made me put together these 2 booklets that you're going to see if you get, because we just forget. And why vows are so important, which we'll talk about, is so incredible, because psychologically, vows are said to be so potent. Practicing virtue and morality within the framework of living in vows is said to be, we create 1 billion times more virtuous karma than just being a nice person. There's something about vows for Buddha, and they all say if we live in our vows perfectly, we get enlightened so quickly, But we've got to try and understand what vows mean. They sound very punitive, like someone's sitting on top of you. You shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. It's not like that, It's not like, and we'll talk about that. It's sort of instructions of how to turn yourself into a marvelous person. They talk about vows being like this subtle physical energy visible to clairvoyance, something so potent about vows. So knowing what they are, it's sort of like I said, when you drive a car, you don't think you take vows, but you take vows. I will never put my foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake. I will never turn the wheel left if I'm turning right. You don't think of it as a vow, but that's exactly what it is. And there must be hundreds of things you would vow not to do. And why? Because you want to be a good driver. Same here. You're trying to turn yourself into this marvelous person, But vows are said to be so powerful subtly. It's very fascinating. Anyway, I'm not going to give too many teachings of the character of the vows. I'm just going to go over the list of them. The refuge and the bodhisattva in the morning. And then in the afternoon, those who've taken highest yoga tantra. And that's the thing that I've seen. Most of us, we take our highest yoga tantra. We haven't got a clue what we're committed to. We've got commitments to the 19 Buddha families. We've got commitments to do this and that and 6 those vows and these things and that and this. There's a list of long things. I know I put this booklet together, taking all from Lama Zopa's teachings in the FPMT. When I remember it was in Boston one year, and some people had taken initiation, Kalachakra, from His Holiness. And they said, because His Holiness doesn't have centers, so who's going to give the teachings except Gelugpa centers? You know? So I remember they said, well, can you please go through what our commitments are? Go through 6-session Guru Yoga, what we're supposed to do. So then I started going through, we've got to do this, and got to do that, and got to do this, we've got this, and we've got this, and we've got this. And a person in the back said she took initiation 30 years ago. She kept saying, what? I didn't know I was supposed to do that. What? I didn't know I was supposed to do that. And I realized none of us know. And then we get scared of them. Don't be scared. They're the instructions of how to become a Buddha super quick, you know. So we're all there in the list of things. So at least we can look at the list, know exactly. And because of the tantric vows are completely based on bodhicitta, then if you're going to come to the one in the afternoon, if you've taken highest yoga empowerment, and I really encourage you to, and this book has got everything in it, you know, all the marvelous teachings from Lama Zopa, explanations of 6-session Guru Yoga, how to do it, the longer version, the shorter version, a commentary by Rinpoche, lovely, a beautiful teaching on Tsog, really delicious background teachings, you know, on just give us more meaning to all of these things. And we can help other people then. And we'll know what we're committed to. Because at least if you don't know what you're committed to, if you don't know you're supposed to not supposed to put the foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake, you won't know if you've done the wrong thing. You won't know why you crash. So we've got to know these things. But so if you're going to come to the afternoon one, you need to come to the morning one, because that's when we'll do the bodhisattva vows. I'm not going to give commentary on them. I can't do that. But we'll go through the list. And then you feel a lot better because now you know what you're doing, you know. I find it so, I'm such a fan of vows, even though I'm lazy, probably don't keep half of them. I'm a real fan of vows, you know. Makes sense. And Buddha loves his vows. So we're going to do that tomorrow. Morning session for refuge and bodhisattva vows. You don't need to have taken those, but if you're interested, you can come to those. And then if you've taken highest yoga tantra, that'll be the afternoon plus the morning one for the bodhisattva vows. And a little bit that I know about them, I'll explain. I've got this booklet with these teachings in it, okay? Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you, Mary.
And
See you
Venerable
soon.
Robina, you're going to be back in about 45 minutes for Vajrasattva
Oh, am I?
practice.
What time?
9:15.
Oh,
45
good.
minutes.
Okay. All right, then I'll be there. I'll see you soon. Okay. Goodbye.
Thank you, Venerable.